So, patch 12.02 is out, and that means some agent changes. And the agent changes are coming to these two, Reyna and Harbor. And I'm joined by my Twitch and YouTube chat. They're all spamming, as you can see right now. But yeah, we're going to talk about the changes that came in for these agents. So here is Valorant patch notes 12.02. There's some bug fixes in here as well, but we're mainly just going to talk about the agents and what has changed. So, agent updates in general. Certain agent ability deployers can now be concussed. Wingman Seeker's Boombot. Does that matter that much? Probably not. But there you go. Let's get into what really matters. Harbor. So the Cove, let's start with this. The cooldown, this is a big change. Cooldown from 40 to 30 seconds. And the smoke duration has increased from 15 to 19.25. Now, Sideshow told me earlier on VODfathers that this is the same as a Brim Smoke. So Harbor's smoke will last as long as a Brim Smoke, which is the longest in the game. And the cooldown is only 30 seconds. Now, of course, Harbor only has one smoke. So I think that this just makes sense, to be honest. When you've only got one smoke, it's going to make that smoke obviously better. Also, the health from the Cove, so when you activate the shield, has gone up from 500 to 680. Now, we're going to watch a little video in a second that will kind of show you, what that actually means. Harbor now re-equips his gun faster after activating the Cove as well. So that's when he puts the little shield on, you'll get your gun out quicker. So overall, these are all very good changes, I think. This is obviously just a straight buff. It's a pretty sizable buff, I would say, as well. I still think, though, Harbor, you still can't play him in solo smokes, right? Normally, when you're looking at changes like these, like, longer smokes and smaller cooldowns and stuff like that, better smokes, you would think like, oh, can you play Harbor as a solo smokes? I would still say no. Right? It's a buff, it helps. It's great. I like to see it. It is also somewhat relevant for one-ways, right? This cooldown might help you chain one-ways. If you're playing like Astra Harbor or Brim Harbor or maybe even Omen Harbor, like having this smaller cooldown and the fact that it lasts longer might make the Cove a better smoke, for controlling certain areas of maps as a one-way. And overall, this is a bit of a buff for the Cove and is quite nice. So Storm Surge. Storm Surge now plays audio in-world if enemies are hit. Storm Surge on every map isn't great. Most of Harbor's kit is, generally going to more favor perhaps bigger maps. But I do think that actually smaller maps, because of the Storm Surge, maybe he is just going to be better on smaller maps now. Whereas I think we tend to think of Harbor as, playing on Icebox and Breeze and, those bigger maps in the pool generally. This thing goes through walls, so if you throw something at a wall and someone's behind that wall, you will get the audio confirmed that they are there. The thing is, it's probably not quite big enough to like fully clear out areas of maps. That is pretty big, right? Like, it is a pretty big buff, I would say, to the Storm Surge overall. High Tide, the wall height has increased from 6 to 8 meters, and the max length has increased from 50 to 60. Now, initially, I thought the wall height, like, it'll matter on some maps like Icebox and whatever, but not really matter too much. Shio actually pointed something else on VODfathers, which I do think is quite an interesting idea and quite relevant, which is, of course, that against agents like Jet and Waylay, it means that they are more likely to dash through the wall and therefore be slowed. That actually could be somewhat useful. I don't think that's the change that you will notice most, if I'm being honest. On maps like Icebox, it is actually, I think, pretty useful. The length as well being increased from 50 to 60 meters. Now, this one I think does matter a lot. Because, one, it will mean that certain walls that you might want to do, that other, like, we're just like, oh, can I do this wall from here? Particularly, again, on bigger maps. Like, that means that you will always be able to probably do it from a safer position. And also for harder walls, I'm thinking like the Tui's Pearl wall, right, where it wiggles and wiggles and wiggles and goes on a bunch of different stuff. That should be easier, right, because you've got 10 extra meters to play with. I'm looking for a harbor wall. I'm looking for like how the different walls that I can do that cover off like 4 different things, to be quite interesting in how you can use this. And I think the extra 10 meters, might make that viable. Yes, we all wish we had 10 extra meters to play with, kid. Thank you for that. And then the Reckoning, the wave speed is increased by 25%, so we'll see the video in a second. It goes quite a lot faster, obviously making it harder to dodge. Obviously, that's good. And we can now reuse the ultimate to stop it in place for 7 seconds. So what that means is like the old Cascade, where you can basically just press the button again and it will just stay in place for 7 seconds. Now, on attack side, that's not doing too much, but it's when you want to hold a space, right? So you can think of this as The duelist comes in here, right, through the choke point. You send out your ult. It hits the duelist. You then stop your ult here. The rest of the team just gets stuck behind it, because if they run through it, they get slowed and nearsighted. So they can't run through it for 7 seconds, right? And you've also hit the duelist. So they're slowed and nearsighted. So the duelist is slowed nearsighted on the site on their own for 7 seconds, right? Because their teammates just have to just sit there. They can't get through it. And obviously the thing is so big that like you can't dash over it or anything, right? Like they just have to sit there. Like it will guarantee you, if you time it right, guaranteed they are sitting back there for 7 seconds. Which obviously is crazy valuable potential. Let's now go and watch the video portion of it so you can kind of see what's actually going on. Okay, so here is the video that actually leaked a bit before the patch notes, but just so you're aware. So this is the Cove HP, right? Now they've actually put it at 625 here, but I think the number in the patch notes is actually a little bit different. The thing to note here, you might not quite be able to see it. You'll see it takes more bullets to break the Cove. There, if you look at the bottom, you might not be able to quite see that, but it says 5. So they've started with a Vandal with 25 bullets, so it takes 20 Vandal bullets. Obviously, that isn't a full clip. I don't think you'll notice this one, like, the most of all of the changes. But obviously, it still is, you know, still a buff. But it's probably not a buff that you're really... Because obviously, you're not going to use the shield all of the time either. This is the height of the wall, so you can kind of see it's a bit taller. Again, this one, you'll notice on some maps, but probably not all the time. Right, this is the extra length. So you can see that's where it's ending there for normal harbor. And this is your extra length now. The extra length that we all want and need. This, I think, is a buff that you will definitely feel. And then this is the ult, right? So you can see that this is when it's stopped. That's what it looks like, right? So that's 7 seconds of it just being stopped there. I'd also, they hadn't really included this in the patch notes, but I noticed this when I was watching the video. Just check out the wind up of the, so this is the old up, this is the new one. Feels like the wind up is also a bit less. Like, just feels like that kind of like push part isn't really as part of it as much now. And you can also see it does go quite a lot faster. I mean, look, that's a lot faster, right? This is a pretty big buff. This is a pretty big buff here for Harbor, I would say. I think this is a big enough buff to where Harbor will see some play. Okay, and now on to Reyna. This is something that is interesting, right? So they're nerfing Reyna. Let's just start with the fact that they are nerfing Reyna, because this is something that I've been saying for a little bit of time that I think started around like mid last year, like summertime last year, springtime last year, where they started like nerfing Phoenix and nerfing Clove, but not buffing them in other areas to make them good at pro play. I think Riot has basically accepted that certain agents like Reyna, like Clove, like Phoenix are just not going to see pro play. Let's just balance these agents for ranked where they will get picked, right? And I think that that is just a good decision. Like, without reworking Reyna, you're not going to actually get, you know, a balanced Reyna. Like, unless they do some big rework, it's just not going to happen. So the changes that they've made are the soul orbs only last 3 seconds instead of 4 seconds. I don't think that's the biggest deal in the world, if I'm being honest. You know, most of the time, I would say, you're using the soul orbs either instantly. So that's not the biggest change in the world, but obviously it is a nerf. And then the Devour, the overheal applied by Devour is now temporary and lasts 10 seconds. That does matter, particularly obviously the lower the ranks you go. That is a big change. So you'll still get the healing when you're in Empress, which also now is a 7 cost ult rather than 6 cost ult, which again isn't like the biggest deal in the world. But this one, the overheal only lasts 10 seconds. That, I think, is a pretty big deal. If you want my honest opinion, I think Harbor now, I would say, is like a playable agent. I don't think he will become a dominant agent. I think it's possible maybe people find some nice Harbor stuff. He becomes like a secondary controller on, you know, a map or two, or like, you know, a potential pick you can make on a map. B tier, maybe low A tier if this is really a big change. I would say probably more B tier.